Oh, here we go. The end of February, it means the end of HF Feb. So we're going to round things off with an extra long episode of the Bionicle Inspiration series. I try to cover about 6 mocks in each episode of the Bionicle Inspiration series. This one I'm going to do 11 of them. So let's give you some inspiration for your own Hero Factory builds for whatever you might be building outside of HF Feb. Because even though it may not be February tomorrow, it's always time to build heroes and it's always time to build villains. So let's begin. The first mock we've got today is Nex 4.0 and it's built by Shubi 4000. Mate, I love a solid Hero Factory hero build, even if it is just using like the blank prefab looking frame that we saw in all the 2.0 heroes. But when we see one like this that takes that and makes it taller, fills in the armor with some nice details, and also adds heaps of impressive weapons and accessories, then man, you've got something that just makes my heart sing. I love this mock. I enjoy the fact that Nex is decked out with all these different weapons, and all of these feel perfect because Nex is meant to be the tech-focused dude. So all these cannons, this nice shoulder turret, the absurdity of it, especially the fact that there's 3 of them there, it feels like something that a tech dude would make. They're like, oh, I found a way to maximize the propulsion of the Flabbergaster and the Dex propulsion, and now I can fire 3 rockets at once on my shoulder. It's nice when the weapons say something about the character. And it's nice when Ben can pronounce science words. I made all those words up as I improv that. Anyway, these weapons feel like overkill, and I just love that. Also, check out some of the subtle hints of trans green on the limbs. Using these translucent CCBS bones here, it adds such a nice spark of color. And I think it perfectly blends with some of the green and orange and light bluish grey that's in this colour scheme. And I like the bravery to also include this. There's only the slightest little bit of that translucent colour thrown in there. And honestly, you can kind of miss it if you aren't paying attention. But it's like adding some nice like mustard on a hot dog or something. It's that little extra bit of kick that you may not even see coming, and you're like, oh, I quite like that. It's a good inclusion, and this is a really good hero. Scout is the name of our next mock, and the name of the person who built it is Alex. The presentation of this build I think is very fun. This dude stepping on the enemy that he's just beaten. It makes for a nice little vignette. And also the idea of a tiny diorama to display your builds, showcasing them in a nice action pose or some kind of nice freeze frame little tableau situation. That's such an exciting way to display your builds. Like, yeah, sure, it can be nice to just have your hero standing there, no base, no stand, no nothing. They're just chilling on your shelf. But building a little diorama like this, it's dynamic, it's cool. Maybe you could do the same. Also, Nex's mask in blue with a brain attack visor on top. How nice does that look? Obviously, you can't actually do this with those real pieces, and obviously Nex's mask doesn't appear in blue. I wish it did, that'd be awesome. But when you build a digital mock like this, you can do fun stuff like that, and it does look pretty cool. Old mate Sadie has built Breeze Tunneler Machine. I'm very happy to see a few more Invasion from Below themed creations in this last episode here, because I really do like the final wave of Hero Factory, Invasion from Below, and I know some of you are hungry for a few more Invasion from Below themed mocks, so this one's for you. Now, we spoke about the awesome color scheme on the very first mock that we spoke about, and I think this color scheme is also beautiful. How good does azure and lime look when it's put together like this? It's so striking. I also love how the azure is pretty much only focused on the limbs. Any other part of the build is either lime, and there's a little tiny hints of black and grey, but even still, that's kind of just localized at the bottom there. You're blocking out these colors and also blocking them onto just the specific pieces. Most of the azure is mainly just on those limb pieces. There's 1 or 2 other pieces that aren't. But blocking it onto specific parts and specific locations, it's a great way to just keep things ordered and looking pretty. That's really nice. As is the unique shape of this mech, this almost crab kind of spider-like design. It's different. I like different. Sadie's killing it as always with this phenomenal build. Now, this next mock, I don't believe it had a name. The email just said that they built a hero, and that was basically all that they wrote. So this is a hero built by Park Doang. Now, this certainly looks like a revamp of Thunder, and I assume it was, and they just didn't put that in the email. Doesn't necessarily look like a hero, but maybe it is a hero, and I kind of love the idea of a villain that decides to change their ways and become a hero. There's heaps of mocks out there that do the classic good guy hates everything and decides to become a bad guy. And that's an awesome concept, but so is the reverse. You don't really see people doing that. So hey, maybe Thunder's decided that robbing banks is lame, and instead they wanted to defend the city from injustice. I like that. And I also really like this mock. We can see in this shot here that there's a light brick underneath the mask. That's a really simple but clever way to add a little bit of lighting onto your mock. Well, of course, it's simple if you have a light brick, but they appear in a good range of sets these days, so they're not too difficult to come across. Now, I also love the limbs and the proportions on this mock. They seem very poseable, and just the rough, silhouette of this mock, it's so distinct and so different. It's some really great stuff. Sherry Cola has reimagined Breeze in our next mock, and I think this is an adorable version of Breeze. Tiny and no feet whatsoever. Yeah, I get the sense that this version of Breeze just floats above the ground and flies around, which I think is a very neat idea. I enjoyed these little jets that are on the back here of this customized torso. It's a great way to just add a little something extra. I feel like you could actually even do that on the typical 1.0 Breeze, just plant some of them onto that prefab torso piece. But seeing them here, it works well with this floating concept. So a different and very nice way to approach Breeze. You could do this with all the other heroes as well, to be fair. Another Invasion from Below themed mock now. This is Evo's Attack Machine 8ULL37 by Victor. This mech is decked out with weapons. 2 shoulder turrets, 2 blaster arms. A bunch of weapons always looks really cool. It certainly looks cool here. And it's also great to see that nice printed CCBS shell piece on the waist there, just underneath the cockpit. Printed pieces is such an easy and quick way to add in just that little bit more detail and make it look realistic and pretty. You gotta love that. Plus, it's nice to see a smaller mech for Evo since, the mech that Evo had in the original set was huge. So it's nice to see a sort of alternate take where he has a more standard-sized mech. I like this a lot. Space Invader by Socket and Ball Torture is next. Now, I'm not actually sure if this is a Hero Factory themed mock, but I love the idea of brain slugs building themselves mech suits to ride around in. That's really funny and it really does look cool. And heck, even if this isn't a Hero Factory themed mock, it's a good reminder that Hero Factory pieces are fantastic. You can of course use them to build non-Hero Factory themed characters. And now that we're getting to the end of HF Feb, you can do that. But maybe you could still build some heroes and villains in March and other months of this year, because it's always the right time to build heroes and villains. Anyway, I really like how they've integrated the brain slug into this mech. The way they've just sort of slightly covered up the front of the face of the brain slug, it reminds me of Darth Malgus, how he's got that sinister looking guard over the front of his mouth. Something very sinister and evil about that, and that sort of same quality is transferred here onto this wonderful creation. Something else that's nice here is this cool image that shows off some of the glow-in-the-dark pieces that have been included on this creation. If you've got some glow-in-the-dark pieces yourself, definitely add them to your mock. It adds a nice creepy and cool look to it. But yeah, great retro colors here, an awesome concept for a mock. This is great. Takota Smith is the next mock, and it was built by Alpha Wolf 325. So it's a bit similar to the next 4.0 mock that we were talking about before. It's always a pleasure to see hero mocks that are decked out with all sorts of new additions and details. I love the scope accessory that's on this shield weapon here, the shield with the spikes, of course. The inclusion of this scope makes me think that those spikes can be launched out of that weapon. It's nice that adding one piece kind of helps you illustrate how this weapon would actually function. That's cool. Also, these Rakshi headpieces on the knees, they blend quite nicely with some of those CCBS armor pieces. It's a good call, and this is a great mock. Ryan Beach has built a towering mock called Beasticon. Now, most mocks that use that Dragon Bolt mask, they're actual dragons, so it's nice to see a humanoid build that utilizes that Dragon Bolt mask. Although it's not just using it for the face, there's also one on the back here. I think that's rather nice. It's cool to see that piece being used as armor. It works quite well in this context. Now, otherwise, I enjoy this wing design on this dragon. Some scary, translucent looking bone wings there. That's cool. Yeah, this is just a really menacing and awesome looking villain character. It's everything you want in a bad guy. Geiky Mox has built our next build, and it's Zib. If you're not familiar with Zib, they were the mission manager for Hero Factory, and they appeared in a lot of the different movies and other animated material for Hero Factory. But he never actually appeared as an official set, which was a bit of a crime, so it's great to see him brought to life here in Lego form. Now, this foot design here, I think that's really cool, using some of these triangular and some of these square-shaped flag pieces to pad out this Mutterfoot design a little bit. It makes it feel really smooth and angular, which, yeah, the original Mutterfoot piece does have that look, but there's also some textures on it that are a little bit more early Bionicle, very greebly, not as smooth as a lot of CCBS armor and other Hero Factory sets typically are. Looking at this, it reminds me of the 1.0 leg armor that we saw on the 1.0 heroes. So yeah, I love that adding just a few extra pieces to a piece can suddenly transform it and make it fit with the aesthetic of other different types of pieces. We got more system pieces being used in expert ways to help shape this wonderful body design. And also, I love this little gap at the base of the mouth to showcase where the mouth is on this head design. I just love that. Yeah, it's nice to see how system pieces can perfectly execute and replicate the look of a construction character. especially one that's been purely animated, because a lot of the times when I remember as a kid, watching those movies being like, how the heck would you actually build that with Lego pieces? So it's nice to see it come to life here. And now DV MOCs has revamped Thunder. So check out this rad lower leg design using sand green curved slopes and a sand green surfboard piece. What a brilliant combination. And it also looks like the very back of that leg design is using one of the Invasion from Below large spike pieces. All of those together, mate, the shaping and the sleekness of that is mind-blowing. Clever part uses and a great overall look. That is such a good lower leg design. And on that, by the way, adding a bunch of sand green to the color scheme of Thunder, it's unconventional, but I really like it. There's just something cool about it. Now, the addition of these yellow piston pieces on these additional weapon arms coming out of the back, I think that's great. Those springs there that are naturally on those yellow and black piston pieces. The look of that helps cement this limb as something that is totally different from the standard limb that we see, coming out of his body as limbs typically do. So yeah, it's a good way to differentiate the fact that these are additional weapon arms. And also, I think that piston look, it kind of adds to the creepy robotic vibe that we get from these weapon arms. With those sword katana pieces, there's a nice kind of sharp edge to them. So the heavier robotic look of these additional limbs, it helps continue that villain aesthetic. There's something unhinged about these weapons. A lot of great part use there. But yeah, man, I love this. It's a great take on Thunder. So that's it, guys. That rounds off this episode of the Bionicle Inspiration series, and it rounds off our coverage of HF Feb. Honestly, that was so much fun to make all of those Hero Factory episodes. I'm obviously going to be doing more throughout the year, but yeah, stay tuned for next February when I make even more stuff for HF Feb. So yeah, get ready for me returning to some Bionicle videos, more system-style videos, all sorts of great stuff. It's coming your way soon. But like I said, just because HF Feb is basically over now, doesn't mean you can't build heroes or villains any other time that you want. It's always a good time to be building them. So thank you so much for watching, guys. Happy HF Feb, or happy end of HF Feb. Excited to see the places we go next. Thanks for watching, happy building, and bye for now.